companies pay you based on the results or the value that you bring to the company. It's not your CV. It's not years experience. It's not the number of certs or the amount of technical training you have. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 my friends. You know what time it is. It's time for Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. E is in the house. It's always a pleasure to be with you, even though it's virtually. I feel like we connect and we get to have some great conversation. I always appreciate comments. So if you have any questions or comments or feedback that you'd like to share with us, please do that. I'd love to respond or even have you help me determine what the next theme of our next episode is. What I want to talk about today, because it's coming up a lot with my coaching clients and on my coaching calls, is this whole concept of salary, money, and what are you worth as a CISO, right? One of the questions I get a lot with somebody who's thinking about becoming a CISO is, what am I going to get paid? I mean, how much more am I going to make? Or they're asking me, hey, based on their current salary, is that too high? Is that too low? Now, the reality is those questions are always hard to answer, and here's why. Companies pay you based on the results or the value that you bring to the company. It's not your CV. It's not years experience. It's not the number of certs or the amount of technical training you have. Ultimately, when a company decides that they're going to give you a raise or pay you X amount or give you a certain bonus, it's very simple. It's because of the value that you provided to the company, which is directly driven by the results that you created for them. So I want to start shifting your mindset of how you think about this, because I get a lot of people that focus on the wrong data and therefore get very, very frustrated with the results. Like one of the things that comes up a lot is, Eric, I have 8 years experience, I have 7 certifications, and the company's only paying me $150K. I should be getting paid at least $250K. Remember, I love you, I care about you, and we sometimes on this podcast have those hard discussions, and this is going to be one of those where some of you is not going to like what I have to say. But if you can recognize a simple fact, when somebody says something to you that triggers you or gets you upset, that's an indicator that they basically hit a sensitive spot. Right? If you have a sore area or a bruise or a cut and somebody presses on it, it's going to hurt a lot more than if they press on a regular part of your skin where you're not injured. So it's the same thing with discussions. If I'm talking about something that really doesn't bother you, or it's not a sensitive area, or it's not something that really is something you think about a lot, you'll be like, okay. But when it's something that you know is true, but you don't want to admit it, and it's a sensitive area, that's when you start getting angry and triggered. So this is one that if you start feeling that, recognize, okay, hit pause, take a deep breath, and let's go back and say, okay, why is this bothering me? Why is this getting me upset? And the reality is, it's usually because it's the truth, and you don't necessarily want to hear it. So just keep an open mind during this discussion. But the reality is this. If you come to me and say, Eric, I have all these years experience, I have all these certs, I have all this stuff, and I should be getting paid a lot more money. My answer is, according to who? Who says that you should be getting more money? Well, industry standards or industry surveys. So you mean to tell me that just because you have 10 certs, and just because you've worked in the industry for 8 years, that is the value you bring to the company? No, that means nothing. You could have 10 certs and show up and do nothing, or you could have 0 certs and show up and change the business and drive millions of dollars of revenue. So the reality you have to ask yourself, which is a hard question, is this: why am I not providing more value? Or why is the company not seeing the value that I'm providing? Because the reality is, if you want to get paid more, you need to deliver better results. If you want to get paid more, you need to deliver more value. Yes, sometimes a company might say, oh, because you have these certs, we'll give you a little more. But I'll tell you, if you don't show up and you're not results driven, they're not going to keep you around. So this is a mindset shift. It's not the CV that's going to get you paid more money. The CV is solely meant to get you the interview, to show that you're qualified. But it's the interview where you're going to show the value and results that they're willing to pay you more than what you're currently making, because you're going to deliver results that far exceed the amount of money they're giving you. I always sort of laugh and chuckle when you see these articles where people are complaining. The CEO of the company is getting $4 million and they got a $3 million bonus, yet their line workers or this group of people, they did not give them a raise and they did not give them any bonuses. That is so wrong. Is it? Is it? I mean, come on, let's peel back the layers. The reality is this, and it's a discussion that people don't like to have, and that's what we do on this podcast. We sometimes have light discussions and we sometimes have heavy ones, but the reality is this: the CEO was delivering results, and those employees that didn't weren't. Now, you can get upset with me, but the reality is, let me ask you a question. If that CEO wasn't driving massive results and wasn't bringing in massive amounts of revenue to the company, why in the world would the board of directors give them a $7 million comp package? It doesn't make any sense. The only logic is they were providing a ton of value and they wanted to make sure that CEO stayed at the company because they knew they could go anywhere else and deliver similar or more results than they're driving at that organization. And the unfortunate reality is, if you were somebody who didn't get a raise or didn't get a bonus, it's because the company doesn't see the results that you're giving to that company and believe that they could find somebody else at the same salary to do your job. So I just want to shift your mindset that it's not based on years or anything else. Companies deliver salaries or expenses, which is what your salary is, it's an expense, based on the more results and value you provide to the company. So if you want to be one of the highest paid CISOs on planet Earth, it's simple. Deliver more results and more value than anybody else. That's how you maximize what you make. And that is the difference between a CISO that makes $250 and a CISO that makes $700K. I had that recently where somebody came to me, they were new coaching, and they go, Eric, I can't understand why other CISOs are making $300K more than I'm making. I have similar experience, similar qualifications, and similar certs. And I said, do you want the truth? And they said, yes. I said, are you sure? Because you might not like it. I said, it's easy. They're delivering a lot more results than you are. Because the reality is, if you were delivering millions of dollars of results and you were driving millions of dollars of revenue for the company, they would be paying you $300K more. Because they know how much value you're providing, and they know that you can go to any other company and they would pay you a lot more money. That's why I always encourage anybody who is a CISO, is to continually apply for jobs and interview and see what happens, because that's going to tell you your true value in the marketplace. If you're interviewing for multiple CISO jobs and you are not getting any offers, or you're not getting any offers with a higher salary than what you're currently making, that's a good indicator that you need to crank up the value. You need to crank up the results that you're giving to that organization. On the other hand, if you go on interviews and almost every interview you go on, they offer you a job for $200K more than you're currently making, that shows you that you are delivering tons of value and they see the results you can bring to the company and are willing to pay you for that. That then puts you in a much better position to potentially go back to your current company and ask for a raise, because you now have verified and validated proof of the value that you're providing to that company or any other company that you can work for. But that's what you need to let drive your results. If you get on this bandwagon, which is so dangerous, where you look at other people and you start playing the comparative game, well, I have more certs, or I have more experience, I have more this, why are they getting paid more? It's dangerous, because it has nothing to do with that. Those things might help you get the interview, but they're not going to drive your compensation and your net worth. And let's just look at a simple example. If you have two people, one person doesn't have a lot of degrees, doesn't have a lot of certs, doesn't have a ton of experience, but you bring them into your company and they drive significant amount of revenue. They create new ideas and new product offerings and new solutions that bring in 5 to 10 million additional revenue that they are directly responsible for. That's person A. Person B has degrees, PhDs, tons of certifications, 15 years experience, but they come in and they're just trying to change everything and put their stuff in place and revamp everything and just spend a lot of money on rebuilding the entire network, trying to make it more secure, but they're not driving direct benefit or revenue to the company. If you were the CEO of that company, who would you want to be your CISO? Who would you want to have in place? And moment of truth, because I know some of you, I've done this exercise with groups of people. There are some of you that are like, oh, Eric, I would absolutely pick person B because they're focused on security and they're focused on revamping and they're focused on this. I hate to tell you, my friend, that's not how CEOs think. That's not going to get the job done. You want that CISO that's going to automatically secure. That should be a given. If you're a CISO, your minimum level of performance is securing the organization. That's not even something we should be questioning or talking about. That is a given. The question is, how much additional value are you going to drive? How much additional revenue are you going to bring to the organization? The trick, if you want to master this game of Chief Information Security Officer, figure out the middle letters as a foundation, information security. That is something you should just automatically do. That should be embedded into everything you do, everything you think about, everything you approach is information security. But you want to get more compensation, more recognition, more advancement, focus on the outer letters. Focus on chief officer. Chief officers do what? They drive revenue and profitability for the company. That is what a true chief officer does. That is why chief officers often will get millions of dollars in salary and compensation because they're driving significant amount of revenue and profitability. If you're a chief officer and you're able to drive and bring in $50 million worth of revenue that contributes to $25 million worth of profit to the company, Of course, you're going to get paid millions of dollars compensation. If you're not directly adding value and you're not driving results and you're not bringing in revenue, why would they pay you a lot of money? Why are they bringing a lot of data, right? This is business 101 that a lot of information security people forget and don't understand when they add those outer letters to their title. When you add chief officer to your title, you are now using information security as your secret weapon to drive revenue and profitability. The more of that you can drive, the more results you're responsible for, money will flow freely from the heavens, my friends, right? It's the trick, but I'll tell you right now, if you are purely an overhead function and you are purely just spending money to secure the organization, which is always sort of a hard thing to measure, right? You're going to have a hard time making north of 500K. It's just going to be hard because the justification of the results is not there. But if you come in and say, how can we actually use cybersecurity as a business line? And I do this with a lot of companies where I'll go in and I'll look at their offering, whether they're website design or whether they're hosting or cloud or any of those things. And I'm like, wait a second. What if you started having product offerings related to security? So if you want to have better security, secure transactions, or protection against ransomware, or automatic backup of data, or things like that, we have a menu for you. So you're concerned about ransomware? Great. $30K a month, and we'll provide some protection against that. You want to make sure that we're checking and verifying and validating where transactions are coming from based on location or source, and we're blocking known bad addresses. That's $15K a month. And now you roll out, even though when you were brought in, it was not viewed as a security company. The reality is every company today has to be a security company. Think about it. If you're a company and you don't protect your client's information, you don't protect your client's credit card information or personal information or banking information, and you continually get that breached and compromised, and your customers are continually getting targeted and losing money because of your lack of security, you don't think that's going to impact business? You don't think that's going to cause problems, reputational issues, and negate a lot of the revenue and profitability in place? Of course it is. So the way world-class CISOs think is no matter what company they go into, they're thinking, how can we turn cybersecurity into a profit center? How can we switch the model? I learned this lesson the hard way. One of my first CISO jobs in the 90s after leaving the CIA was at a large telecom. They were growing fast, had a lot of customers, a lot of challenges, a lot of issues. So I'm like, woo, here we go. And I was their chief information security officer, but all I did was focus on securing the organization and securing the enterprise. I was overhead and I generated zero revenue and zero profitability. So basically, I was paid off a profit. The company had a lot of funding, and then after 2 years, the market wasn't what it was supposed to be. They lost some funding, and their revenue and profitability dropped significantly. What do you think happened? My budget and my team got cut. Now, here's the most frustrating part. Actually, with what they were going through, their exposure, their risk, and their security concerns actually increased. But your overhead and you're going to get cut when profitability is low and revenue is low. So I basically realized at that moment, not only was I not a real CISO, because I didn't protect and control my team, and I didn't do what was best for the company. All I did was spend money. I didn't bring in any money. And the reality is, I was not in control of my own destiny. So since then, that was a wake-up call. And every other company I've ever gone to, where I was CISO, CTO, or any other chief officer title, there were different letters in between, but I always had that chief officer. I always controlled my own destiny. I always generated revenue. Because now, if I'm generating revenue and I'm using that profitability to basically fund my security, now, if other business units don't do well or other business units struggle, I'm in control of my destiny because they're like, wait, we're not going to cut Eric because he's making money for the company. Why would we cut him and cut what he's doing? So in essence, I'm creating this really cool life cycle in which I'm doing the ISO job, the information security piece, but I'm doing it in a way as a chief officer that I'm also generating revenue for the company. This, if you can get this, because this is the biggest problem with CISOs today, and it's the biggest problem with security engineers. Security engineers think that it's okay to basically spend money and not generate any money. And if that's your mindset, you are always going to be struggling on the salary and the compensation front because there's going to be a limit. If all you're doing is an overhead and you are not generating any money for the company, there is going to come a time and come a place where they're reviewing the expenses and going, why are we paying so much for this position when we can pay somebody half and get the same results? And that's that frustrating part that people that don't get this always get in their career, where they grow to a certain level, where they go over that peak. They go over that point where now the radar goes off and CFO or others in the companies are like, why are we paying so much for that overhead? Why are we paying so much for a position that brings zero revenue to the company? And you have to avoid that to control your destiny. So if we switch our mindset that as a security engineer, what if we went in and said, okay, our job is not to go in and just protect the company. Our job is not to go in and point out vulnerabilities and say, no, and negatively impact revenue. Because believe it or not, that's what most security engineers do. When a security engineer goes into a meeting with a new business idea that could generate revenue for the company, and they basically say, this is too big a risk. And they say, I will not approve this. I will not authorize this. This is too big a risk, and I'm going to let the executives know this is way too risky. What did you really do? You basically diminished or took away or negated a revenue stream. You're basically saying, I am not going to let you generate this additional revenue. Yes, because it's too risky. What if you became a partner? What if you went in and said, what you're proposing is too risky, but if we do these tweaks and we do these modifications, not only can we do this, but we can upsell some of these features and actually 3x or 4x the revenue that you were anticipating. So now they come to you with an idea for $30 million in revenue. And when they're done speaking with you as the security engineer or the CISO, you've now created a $70 million idea. Now you are controlling your destiny. Now you are in the driver's seat, and now you are extremely valuable. Whether you do that as a security engineer is a bonus. If you do that as a security engineer, you're going to be paid one of the highest security engineers, and they're going to pay every penny of it because you're worth every penny of it. So it's optional for security engineer, but it will accelerate you from everyone else because you are delivering massive results. However, as a CISO, it is not optional. As a CISO, it is mandatory. Because guess what? Security engineer doesn't have CO in their title. You do. And I will tell you right now, companies are demanding more and more of their chief officers. And they're getting more and more frustrated with chief information security officers because many of them are glorified security engineers that just take overhead and do not contribute anything to the bottom line of the company. And like I said, if you're doing that, if you're pure overhead and you're in information security and you're not the chief officer and you are making over 300-400K, be careful, right? Because there's going to come a time when they're going to start reviewing and looking around going, why are we paying that much for pure overhead? And in my experience, you're going to be capped below 500K. You're never going to be able to break that 500K margin if you're not a chief officer because you're not generating value. I know CISOs that make total comp millions of dollars. I know CISOs that are making close to what the CEO, COO, and CFO are making because they are managing large amounts of revenue and profitability for the company. That's how you become valuable. So I want to shift your mindset that if you want to be worth a ton, don't focus on the money. Focus on the value and results you're providing. Because here's what I found in my career. If all you care about the money and all you do is chase the money, you're going to hit a cap pretty quick and you're going to start getting frustrated and disgruntled because you're going to be like, well, I got one cert and I got 10K more. So I got another cert and I got 10K more. And I got another cert and I got 10K more. So you're programming yourself that certs equal more income. The reality is about cert number 3 or cert number 4, you got more than enough skills for what they need. So they're not going to pay you more for it. You're not going to get to the point where you're pure overhead and you're making $1 million a year. It doesn't happen, my friends. You want to get to where you're worth it. Every one of you are worth millions upon millions of dollars, but you have to drive millions upon millions of dollars of results and values to get there. Certs and experience and pure play training is not going to get you the compensation and salaries you deserve. It's results and value. The more you focus on driving results and value, and the less you focus on I'm worth X amount, the more money you'll make. It's the craziest thing, and this was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn. But there's really only 2 times in my career that I really look back and go, when I went right and I probably should have went left. And in both those cases, the decision was purely based on money. They offered me more money. They kept throwing money at me. And instead of focusing on value and results and what I really wanted to do, I said, okay, they're going to pay me more. And I had the false belief that that was because I was worth a lot more. When in reality, they were paying me more because there were things they wanted from me and to take from me. And then what normally happens when you follow the money? At some point, they get what they want out of you, and then the money stops. So if you're in a position where somebody's throwing a lot of money at you, significantly more than what you're currently making, for doing the same exact thing you're currently doing, be very skeptical. Because ask, what do they really want? Most likely, there's something they want to extract or take from you from the short term. And once they get it in a couple of years, you're not going to go any higher. And in reality, they're going to start trying to lower it or reduce it. But if you're paid more because you're delivering results and delivering value, that's when the magic happens. And here's the real reason. If you're generating $2 million of business for a company and they're paying you $500K, you're golden. Because you really have 3 options. Option 1 is keep generating more revenue and keep having them pay you more. If they don't, you go somewhere else. I'll tell you right now, if you walk into a company and say, I can bring in $5 million worth of revenue at a nice profitable rate, they will pay you for that. You get compensated and paid for that. And then here's the third option. If you are truly capable, and every one of you should because you are, of generating $5 million of revenue, what can you always do? Start your own company. Even with taxes, expenses, others, you're still pulling in 1.5, 2 mil salary there. So what I'm doing is I'm shaping your mindset so you're in a position of power. Because when you're pure overhead and you are not generating any direct revenue or direct results to the company, you're in a position of weakness. You are at the mercy of that company, like I learned with my first CISO position. But, if you start recognizing the power of a chief officer and you start generating and creating value, results, and revenue, you're always in control. Because worst case scenario, you can always do it for yourself. So I just wanted to shift the mindset because I get a lot of conversations on salary. And when I say why, well, I have certs, I have the, no. You get compensated based on the results and value. So what are the results and value you're currently providing today? And that's what you're currently getting paid. And then how can I increase results and value to get more compensation and more benefit? I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of a CISO, and we'll see you next week.